Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Leslie Jennings. I am a faculty member of the University of Texas at Arlington. I have an operating room scene behind me, not just because I think it's fun, but I have been a perioperative nurse for over 30 years. And the scene behind me is actually from one of the OR suites where my nursing students actually get to observe and practice in the perioperative clinical, which is the topic of our course content today. So I, again, have been a nurse for over 30 years. I've been a faculty member for about 15 years. And I just recently lost my mind and joined the tenure track, which I'm in my third year approaching that journey. So I'm glad to get to share more about with you in a minute. And I'm going to pass it off to Messina.
Good morning and good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Messina Mentor. I am one of the librarians here at the University of Texas in Arlington. I've been a librarian for about 4 to 5 years. This is my first part in the academic arena. I am a respiratory therapist and have been doing that for over nearly 40 years this year. So I have the health and medical background in my heart and soul, and the librarianship, the connection is I like to help people. So that's where I come from. And I'm going to give it to Megan.
Hello, everyone. I am Megan Zara. I'm the Open Educational, or OER, resource librarian here at UTA. I started my professional education career as a middle school English teacher, and then I moved into being a digital learning specialist where I worked mostly with teachers to help them integrate technology in meaningful ways. UTA recruited me, and they told me I was a librarian, so I really didn't know until about 2 years ago that this is where I was supposed to be, and OER was what I was supposed to dive into, and it's really wonderful, and I love being part of this crew.
And I love being a part of this crew too. And I was told to start with a joke. I said, and so I will. By my crew, they told me to do this. A content specialist, learning architect, instructional technologist, OER librarian, and accessibility specialist walk into a bar. And by the time they leave, the bar has an open license, a smoother workflow, a better user experience, and a rubric for the perfect pour. So there, they tell me I will do. I am also known as Dr. Pirate. As you see, you will have a lot of piratical references today. I mean, we are a motley crew because I do have a doctorate literally in pirates and pedagogy and children's literature, and I received that from Illinois State University in Normal, Illinois. So anyone who knows Normal and how it ties to teaching, you'll get the irony, because those were what we called teachers' colleges that were established by the capitalists of the Industrial Revolution, you know, to make people cogs on the work in the workstation. Now, by the time I was getting the doctorate, already practicing in almost every education for K through 12, higher ed, community ed, corporate, nonprofit, traditional, online, and just been around. And now I've worked with 7 universities, and that includes a naturopathic medical school. I've worked with a lot in the medical fields and also in international health organizations. So, excuse me, where I received that PhD in normal, that's how I figured out how to define normal in practical pedagogy. So now I founded the Dark Classroom, which is a ship where pirates meet pedagogy, and that's how I met the seaworthy crew. And again, I'm appreciative to them. So I took some notes based on our order of operations. Jarek, I just want to double check with you. Do you have the list of prompts that are by these topics?
The list of prompts that are...
They're organized by the topics.
I think those are you sent them to us, right?
I sure did.
Okay.
Now I just have the list, and so the outcome that I see is that we've got the course structure and the design for alignment is first. It looks like we've got a tie between the quality and impact category and the tools that we used, then our definition for success and the challenges we faced. And so if we get then to the last 2, we will do those. But before we go, you probably do want to know a bit about the framework that we're talking about, but let's actually start with the high context seas we were sailing on, which of course, Dr. Leslie Jennings, this is all you for now.
Thanks, Stacy. So for those of you, I've seen that, I know that Michelle, I saw in the chat, you are from Loyola, I can't say that, University in New Orleans. So I'm hoping that there may be some other College of Nursing faculty on, but if not, just a little bit about nursing is very, very unique. We at the University of Texas at Arlington, we are the largest school of nursing or college of nursing in the state of Texas. We graduate 400 graduates every semester with their nursing degrees, and we are very focused on competency-based education, which is definitely something I know that aligns a lot with what we are talking about here with this Coaches Network today. But the background is 2 years ago, we try to have community partnerships with all of our clinical facilities. So when we're faced with the nursing shortage, everyone always says, why don't we just graduate more nurses? If we have a nursing shortage, make more nurses. But we are so limited by a lot of different factors, but primarily clinical sites are one of our biggest limiting factors. When you have a hospital setting, you can only have so many different groups of students that come through there, and you have to have a lot of oversight. It's about 1 to 8 or 1 to 10 with a nurse faculty ratio to students. So anyway, we try to have these clinical partnerships, and we also are trying to grow the nursing population. And one of the areas that was identified as having a big gap was in perioperative nursing roles. So that's primarily in the operating room, so circulating nurses and scrub nurses who actually work in the OR, but also that encompasses pre-op nurses and post-op nurses. So any of you who've had surgeries, most people have had at least one experience or a family member that had that. That's kind of encompassing that perioperative role. So one of our clinical partners approached us and said, we really would love to have students have more exposure to these perioperative nursing settings. And then with kind of the hopes, the end goal that maybe they would have interest in wanting to work there and work in those environments. So 2 years ago, we formed a partnership with 2 other universities, local universities here in the area. And we offered a perioperative clinical course as a partnership with 2 other universities. And we had just a few students that enrolled. There was interest for it. And so last year, UTA decided we're going to do our own offering, and we're going to offer this course as a specialized topic. But then students who were applying for jobs and they really wanted on their transcript this specialized perioperative clinical to be listed as a course instead of just a specialized topic. So the university agreed that we would be able to create our very own perioperative clinical nursing course. It's called Care of the Perioperative Patient. So anyway, so I was tasked to create this course, and with that partnership, we are assigned an instructional designer who is going to come alongside you, because I am a registered nurse, as I already shared with you. I have a lot of knowledge in that area. An instructional designer, I am not. So I can do things in Canvas, which is our learning management system that we use. I'm pretty decent at creating assignments, but an instructional designer, definitely out of my wheelhouse and expertise. So I was assigned an instructional designer, but I will give you a little bit more information about it. This course is so weird and unique because we offer it in a Maymester. And I don't know how many of you have Maymesters at your colleges, but our Maymester is housed right after graduation and right before summer 1 session starts. And it is a 2.5 week long time frame. And when I say 2.5 weeks, I mean literally like 16 to 18 days, depending on how the calendar falls. So we are compressing 16 weeks of semester-long course content in less than 21 days. And on top of that, if that doesn't even sound like fun, on top of that, we are combining didactic course content with clinical observational experiences. So typically with nursing courses, you have a whole semester of didactic alongside a whole semester of clinical experiences. So we started off thinking maybe we just do clinical experiences, but the students didn't have context when they were entering the OR. So we wanted to kind of provide experiences, didactic content, case studies in different ways for them to be familiar We also do a simulation day in our smart hospital where they can have some hands-on practice in a very safe environment that's very low stakes before we send them into the operating room. And all of this happens in, again, 2.5 weeks. So I was assigned an instructional designer through the university to partner with and create this course. And hence, that's how I met Dr. Greathouse, who was actually just assigned to me. We had no connections or collaborations outside of that. We were connected by the university and met virtually. I've never met her in person since she lives in Arizona, but we met virtually, and we actually met last fall. So we started connecting, I believe, in late August. So of course we know now is March, but it has taken definitely this entire time since then, meeting weekly, sometimes bi-weekly, sometimes off the fly, just this entire, and the course is now done, and it is, well, it's almost done. We're having some accessibility challenges, which we will talk with you guys later about. But anyway, we have spent this time, and that's how the course started. And that's how my introduction with Stacy was, and that sort of starts the connecting of the dots. I'll pass it off to you, Stacy.
Oh, cheerio. Many thanks. I'm going to take the poll down, and as Leslie has explained our framework, this was exciting to me because I am a learning architect. And when I came, I am a contract instructional designer for UTA. So I'm still around and doing a lot of different kinds of projects. And I like things like Sudoku puzzles. So this, I just lit up, especially because when I first came to the course, the way she had built it gave me the big Baru moment, because I was handed it to do a quality matters review on it. And she has content knowledge and had been delivering it in person with everything smooth. When it came into the online environment, it was stuck into a different class. So they were literally 2 classes fused together, and I did not have context. And I couldn't do the QM. I wrote a report instead, but our first meeting, within 3 minutes, I'm like, oh, we've got this. And it was particularly because of Dr. Jennings' personality. The show up of like a growth mindset, like you wouldn't believe this investment, not just as an instructor or as a nurse, but let's go and let's learn. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go into the big framework, why you're here, Motley crew, what that actually means. I just want to keep things in mind. We've got a couple of things we're going to be doing here. We're going to break up our time in a specific way. So the first thing I want you to know is we're about to have a panel after I give you the framework, because I'm going to talk about the crew. And after that, it's going to be facilitated based on the categories you were most interested in. So all role members have things to say. And then what we're going to do is have time for you to visit. We're going to breakout rooms so you can go and talk to your roles. So you can talk to our content specialists, and you can talk to the librarians and their accessibility mindedness, or you can come talk to me as the learning architect and instructional technologist. And take that time, ask the specific questions. I will show you anything. We will field that. The last part is specifically for practical Q&A. That means you have a course or you have a relationship that you want to develop with somebody in your university or wherever you might be, and you want to talk to us about how to do it. That's the time to do it. We're also going to crowdsource, though, because we are not the end all be all, and that is part of the crew mentality. The crowd we are sourcing right now, your growth mindset, your ability to show up, your experiences is a part of that. The second thing I want you to be aware of, I'm about to snapshot a whole bunch of our tools. I'm not going to explain the tools. Those are the domains of some of our crew members. And so you'll see those. Now what we're going to do is raise anchor, hoist sails, and talk about the learning experience design Motley crew. For this, I am going to share my screen. It is going to be super helpful. All right. If I might get a thumbs up that you can see it. Oh, hooray. So everybody is on different size of screens. I understand that. I'm going to be sending you resources so that you'll be able to get the text versions of everything I'm about to let you know about. I want to talk a bit about normal, as I've experienced it working in those 7 universities with over 400 educators across 5 different continents. The relationship, as I've experienced, it starts with learners needing to improve their quality of life. Who knew? Meaning a topic needs taught. And 2 people come together after receiving an overview, the parameters, possibly the course description. An instructional designer will possibly give guidance to an instructor, a subject matter expert sometimes, about alignment and hand them a course map or a structure of some sort to do on their own. And there tends to be a one-way street at that point where the instructor will kind of work in a silo, pulling from things they've already got because their experience and they're pulling from that, hooray, and then handing it over, usually or sometimes module by module, depending on the framework, sometimes by your item type, so everybody does all their content together or everybody does all of their learning activities at once. And if you're getting your assessments as an instructional designer, that you'll get some test questions, possibly without any references of what content they're referring to. You might get the barest of directions about how to complete one of the assessments and maybe a list of criteria and a lot of vague quality markers. Many times, in my experience of normal, deadlines become suggestions instead of responsibilities. If there is the expectation in the learning environment for synchronous sessions, oftentimes those remain mysteries about their design soundness and their alignment on the instructional design learning architect side. And it requires a lot of pulling for that. So with the roles, a couple, maybe 3 people, you've got your instructional designers fleshing things out, and there's back and forth. Usually, the way that I've worked across these times, asynchronously, there's a lot of time between things. And the roles will sometimes conflate an instructional designer for an instructional technologist, who then enacts the building of learning objects and the environment. That's what institutions that I've been at reproduce as normal. I'm kind of hoping some of you are having kind of a gut reaction to that with your own experience and that you've already defied it. That's my hope. If you haven't, welcome aboard Dark Classroom. That's what's happening today. We're going to defy a little bit. I'm going to give you a bit of defiance through this Motley Crew framework. So that said, we've got 4 points. Let's define some piratical terms behind the approach. I'm going to tell you about the key roles. And I'm also going to tell you about a ship's code that we have, our commitments to one another as a crew. Then I want to show you a very precise way that we have done it, just one of our paths, an example of how it came together. Pirates lived with 4 inches of tar, iron, and timber between them and certain death. So there was a term, or there is a term called the hierarchy, a highly specialized manner of living that's shaped by the realities of living at sea. We're talking about high context. The body's realities and the community's well-being is just a given. They're all together in a little world. No one has to be convinced of this. They merely have to be validated and know that they're on equal footing for it. And every one of them has sea legs. Now we get the Motley Crew. This is a ragtag bunch of people with diverse backgrounds, and they cannot possibly have the same skills, but they do overlap. The Motley bunch is going to have different languages and cultures, and you had in real Motley crews released slaves and ex-military men and races and abilities. It just had to come together Motley. So with a completed project, it's never the result of you may have heard this, a fish being asked to climb a crow's nest. I'm going to direct now to this Venn diagram. The crew and all of my experiences as I've been an instructor, I have played all of these roles simultaneously and I didn't know it. It took years to flesh this out and realize what I was doing and why it felt so good to find the people that became kind of a part of a crew or a dyad or a triad. Now, do not worry if you cannot completely see this. What I'm going to do is I want to share it in chat. 2 resources, which includes this Venn diagram, but this Venn diagram is only a part of a much larger infographic. It is an open educational resource. It's all yours. Please use it if you like. But if you want more of the text descriptions, everything we're talking about here, there's a blog post that talks specifically about this Venn diagram, and other posts are coming up in the blog that talk about the dyads and the triads and everything. But we do want to talk quickly about the roles and the duties here. And let's start with our content expert. He's actually a content specialist. And the reason for this is not an instructor, not a subject matter expert. Because instructors might overlap and might be the same person, but a content specialist has one foot still in the profession, actively, high context. It's not a subject matter expert who isn't really touched to an educational space and maybe just validating their own expertise. That one person kind of comes together. An instructor's mentality is a different crew, because we are working with design and development at this point. Content specialist is the knowledge anchor. They craft and curate accurate, well-cited, multi-format course content. They're coming with the authenticity of being in the profession with their learning objectives and their assessments, ensuring that the course connects to instantaneously useful real-world applications, and they're not insular to the academy. And they're bringing their disciplinary knowledge to the table while keeping the learning logistics in mind. Then we've got, let's move around here, learning architect. This is our navigational strategist, not an instructional designer alone. The instructional designer role is usually a part of this, but that's framework stuff. A learning architect is there to align your assessments and your outcomes, your content, and your technology into seamlessness. But they're also going to ensure evidence-based quality standards. So they do have the training in that. And the quality standards usually can be validated by something like Quality Matters. And I think I did see a resource being shared about what that particular rubric is. That's its whole other crew. They're also, though, aware of how to help instructors navigate and facilitate a course effectively post-launch. So while this crew is forming and sailing, they can jump ship and be in both spaces. They're also kind of the project manager, kind of preventing your design chaos. Moving into your instructional technologist role, these are your digital hull builders, often conflated with being an instructional designer. They are not. It is a deep specialized skill set that configures and supports learning management systems, if you're working in Blackboard or Moodle or Canvas, and the integrated tools, so that's very technical. But they are also rapport builders in a crew like this, so they are training faculty and students on the effective use of the educational technology that carries the content or they're completing tasks successfully. They're going to troubleshoot those usability issues, ensuring your compliance, whether it's an institutional policy or even legal policies. And they do develop, maintain digital learning environments and objects. Now, a content expert and them will work really closely if there are things like recordings, talking heads, or things that want to happen. We do have now an accessibility specialist. This is my all hands on deck advocate. They implement accessibility solutions across all environments, and they're looking at cognitive, and they're looking at learning and physical and even cultural and linguistic accessibility. But they also know the tools to ensure compliance, and they must get dirty. They are on the crew to help craft and remediate things. So if you've got someone who stays on port just to offer support, they are accessibility support. They are not your accessibility specialist. They're not there with the crew. So they're going to educate faculty and staff on making courses more inclusive from the start, but they are also here with us. And the fifth member is our OER librarian, the knowledge wares curator. They're going to vet no to low cost learning materials that are in alignment. They're reviewing resources for bias, diversity, representation, and proper licensing. They connect our faculty and sometimes our content specialists with professional learning networks, top-tier open resources, and they're guiding their instructors on OER integration, licensing. Those are our domains. Now we work in dyads and triads and four-person crews, and I'm not going into detail on them because I want you to get a sense of authenticity when the crew starts talking about it, and you'll get to see how relationships actually work. Now you'll see my eye line moves. It's because I have a humongous screen. And so that if that's distracting to anyone, that's why. When this crew comes together, we came together with a ship's code because no crew thrives without commitments that are articulated. Pirates honestly have been mistaken historically as lawless and chaotic, but the historical truth is they did not have an issue adhering to authority of their own making because that authority was right there with them, and it was often democratic. So ship's code was universally agreed on. This is a crew mentality, not a group mentality. Conscientious choice of people for skills, values, and trustworthy accountability. And I do have a process where I do this with learners. It has been wildly successful to get them into crew mentality. Crew mentality is just more human. It offers spaces for more honesty and vulnerability. It is always high context. And these are our practices. We start with growth mindset because our number one enemy that we fight instantaneously as a crew is hypocrisy. If we don't learn from and bolster skills from each other, then we may not ask that from learners to do from an instructor or even any group that we foist on them. So we are learning and we grow and we do make the mistakes. We've got stuff to share with you. We are also improving the immediate quality of life for both the crew as we exist and the learners, and that is access to learner-centered. We are empathy. We are learning our content with our content specialist, or they're helping us, and empathy goes seamlessly into the design. We do attend regular structured co-working studios. That's all hands on deck. Economy of time and economy of work. If you've ever heard about body doubling, it's like that, but it's more co-creating time. And all resources are available. It saves a lot of sanity, among other things. So it's highly productive. We also over-communicate in the crew's preferred channels. This is a protection of people who have neurodistinctions or the way they go through our roles, the way that we have to manage our time. We use, if we have to use channel, and we like Teams channels and chat for things that we need quick information for, or emails just to keep accountability of this is where I am checklist. It depends on the crew you're working with. Then finally, we maintain the accountability, quality, and deadline dedication. This is a point of personal accountability to a professional crew. And a crew honestly has every right to maroon a member that tries to sink them. It just does, and it's an agreement. Roles, individuals come, we're having duties and responsibilities, and in doing this, this is our mindset. Let's get into an example. I want to take you on a quick journey. This is where I'm going to show you this kind of screenshot of some of our tools. If something tickles you, you want to know more about, Just jot a note because we're probably going to show it to you a little bit later. This example aligns to General Standards 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 8 of the Quality Matters rubric. That's one example. What's on your screen right now is what came from partnership between a learning architect and a content specialist. This is where we're starting, where we start to properly scaffold in what I call the Holy Hail language. Holy Hail language is transparency at a linguistic level. It means if the wording is in a student learning outcome, larger, it better be replicated somewhere in a lesson outcome, and by Jove, it better also be written about in the directions, in the guidelines, step by step to get it done. It better be called out specifically in content, and it should appear 1-for-1 in the evaluation criteria. I defy Quality Matters to show me something is not aligned. And it's the Holy Hail language. In this case, we had a student learning outcome of analyze various roles, responsibilities, and appropriate nursing interventions for patients during surgical experiences. And we were talking about in a lesson outcome, the steps of the nursing process. In this case, we have ADPI. And I have probably nurses here. If there's a reaction button on your screen right now, just give me a reaction. If you're one of my nurses that knows what ADPI is, I'd love to see those little things just pop up, because that's the example I'm taking you through here. In this particular table, I want you to see how numbers in parentheses are also representative of blooms. We prove definitively that the level of the lesson outcomes, which are beneath a student learning outcome, scaffold up to but do not supersede the level of blooms of the SLO. Now, the level of blooms is behind this arrow I'm seeing, which is a level 4, but you'll see lesson outcomes are allowed to scaffold up. In this course map, what the learning architect is doing as well is working with content for, here are where you see the assessments and the activities. And this is going to lead into our scoring breakdown. We have to identify the sophistication of the assessment. This is how we decide workload, complexity, the number of objectives, and how we can target how much the prompts are worth, how many prompts we need. Because now we've got to take it to, okay, our crew is going to involve our librarians now, our content specialist, our accessibility specialist, we hope, and a learning architect. This is where we are pulling now high context content to hail the language and to get us stuff to create the prompts. Moving through there, we have now the learning architect who has to match with the instructional technology to say, okay, we know we have to achieve these kind of activities to get them to prove that verb. The tool here that we used, that I used, was called H5P, which there is a free version of. And in their tool, there is the ability to feed the outcomes in along with different types of content, videos and audio and websites, and it will automatically generate prompts for me that are instantaneously of a Holy Hail language. From there, working in this kind of crew mentality still, we need an ADPI way. How do you show the process? Content specialist, technologist, learning architect, and saying, okay, of which of these is going to allow us to show a process? We used one of these called a summary. It gave us statements of all of the parts. We said, hey, we know this is first, that is second, this is third. And that's what we used, not only in a learning activity, but scaffolded it up into the assessment, and we're able to reshuffle it. So we now have a master alignment document, which is showing us how we match the technology to the precise item, to then what exact content is fitting the question, the prompt, so that Quality Matters can never say that we are not aligned. This is a working document. These things become very complicated. As you'll see, A lot of conversation would happen in here, a lot of trying to keep accountability. This is one of our communications that worked in our crew. So what happens is by the time we put this in front of learners, they get to see something like an H5P answer summary that tells them exactly what objective we are aligned to. And it also, though it's not on here, tells them precisely what content they can go back and review. And this is from a ticket. It's the learning activity. So it's giving them the opportunity to test, fail, grow, no stakes. But what also happens is by the time that we get into the big assessment, we have pulled precisely from the learning activities. And within and background of this build structure, we not only align the lesson objectives, it's also still the content is called out and it matches the technology. At this point, the learners don't see the behind the scenes build, but if they ever need to or we have to prove it, it is always there. Last thing that we had to do, of course, we needed fresh eyes on this prize. Unfortunately, we have the crew members to do that when we can refer back to our accessibility specialists and our librarians and say, pretty please, go through this course and tell us where we went wrong. And there's definitely a learner kind of presence there because they haven't seen some of the work that's happening between the triad of the instructional technologist, the learning architect, and the content specialist. That's the big piratical framework and the sails we see. I think that was supposed to be seas we sailed. Yes, it was. It's huge. It's massive, which is why I sent you access to the Venn diagram, the explanation. But let's get into the realities. I am stepping back because the crew needs to speak. It's panel time. And we had the list of categories. I am going to stop my share for now. These categories were just defined by all of our participants who came in and were able to vote. And I want to double check. Jarek, do you have the list of prompts?
Yep, it looks like I do. If you could just, yes, I do have it right in front of me.
Fantastic.
What do you want me to do with them?
Well, we had the organization was decided by our people who are here, and we want to support that. If you'd be so kind as just to facilitate at this point the questions from these categories. And the first category that our attendees really wanted to know about was course structure and design to align.
Excellent. So the question is in this category is, how do the design and structure in Canvas support alignment and the specific logistics of the course? Is this the question for us to answer, for the audience to address?
This is for Leslie.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure she can start here. Excellent.
Yeah, so Stacy, this is a great time for you to share the About the Course page, if you wouldn't mind doing that. When we're talking about alignment and we're talking about how we did, so we actually, and Stacy kind of hinted towards this a bit ago when she talked about our overall 3 course outcomes. So we had these 3 course outcomes that we came up with, and then everything from there, every single thing, every decision, every conversation, every assignment, every learning material, everything had to fall into alignment with that. And so just because I think you'll also find this interesting, this course was created with a travel theme in mind. And you might think, well, what in the world does travel have to do with a perioperative nursing clinical? But there were 2 things that drove this. When I first met Stacy, she actually asked me what some of my hobbies were. And at first I thought she just wanted to get to know me better, and which is great. But then I realized she said that she had a deeper purpose for that. And so one of the things that she was trying to get to know me a little bit better so that my personality could really come through in the course. And I told her that I really loved to travel. And so we also, as we talked, we sort of talked about how the experience of going through a surgical procedure is sort of like a journey or a travel. You know, you're starting with, you have to get ready and get prepared, and then you go to pre-op, et cetera, et cetera. And so the color choices even were related to a passport. And so we have these travel destinations, which you can see on the screen on the left, which are the didactic lessons. So each of those, they'll be going on this journey together. And then before they can get into the simulation day, they have to provide, so each day they'll have a ticket in where they've had to do the flipped classroom model. So they'll have a ticket in every day when they come to the synchronous portion. And then before they can go to their simulation day, they'll have to have their passport, quote unquote, you know, they've had it stamped along the way and they have to provide their passport. And so you can kind of see at the very, very beginning, we made sure that they understood exactly what was happening. And then their international customs on their sim day, as I mentioned, they have to do that passport quiz, as you can see on the screen. And we were super transparent about the number of hours. You know, it's daunting for students to have to take this course in such a compressed time frame. So we wanted to make sure that they understood exactly what they were in for, in other words. So by doing this workload time on task, as Stacy's showing with you, we wanted to make sure they understood what everything was going to take, how long things were going to take, providing them some resources for that. Again, transparency in, you know, 40-hour week for the first week is completely reasonable when you look at the calculator for a semester-long 3-credit-hour course. And so we wanted to make sure we told them exactly how we designed every single day, every single learning experience, et cetera. And then they have to spend 45 hours in clinicals over those that they have a little over about, you know, a week and a half to do that. So we wanted to make sure they understood all of those things as well. Stacy, anything you can jump in at any time if you want to talk about. So our SLOs, if you'll click on that tab for me, the SLO tab, this is actually, so we have these 3 course outcomes, as we've mentioned to you, and Stacy showed you one of them earlier. But this was every single one of these. This is going to be our learning outcomes for each and every single lesson. And so these are the cumulative list of that. And so they're going to have maybe different, each there's not necessarily one-to-one meaning. It's one-to-one, we can align everything like that. But some of these they might have in lessons 2 and 4, for example, or lessons 1, 2, and 3. So it's not that they are all only to one lesson, but this is a whole list of exactly when they're finished with this course, what we expect them to know and be able to walk away from with. And so, you know, with competency-based education or building things towards SLOs or learning outcomes, especially nursing, ultimately a nurse becomes a registered nurse by getting a bachelor's degree in nursing or an associate's degree, but ultimately passing the test. They have to pass their NCLEX RN exam. So it is a pass-fail kind of a thing. So when you're looking at these SLOs, they need to have this list. They need to be competent, be able to do all of these things on this list in order to successfully pass the course, even though it is a graded course and they will get a letter grade for it. This is ultimately what we're looking for them to accomplish when they leave the course, this list.
With this relationship, I'm going to speak from a learning architect and the instructional designer role, or the instructional technologist role, because I was occupying both of those. With that, this theme was my driving heartbeat through this, because I will maintain the presence of the instructor, the content specialist. She has, of course, those 2 roles, but thematically it applied. It absolutely applied, because as Leslie talked about, we are traveling from in-school sim to the stakes of a real human being in front of them. These are high stakes. We could not get any more authentic than that, quite honestly. But we had to structure from an instructional design role. We were not doing this module by module. It would not work. We did have destinations. That's our didactic point. And those have a consistent feel. We are embarking, we are exploring, we are engaging, we are extending. We changed the word on things, the travel plans. Our learning materials is a very large collection of, we made sure we were improving the quality of life of our learners by putting Leslie's face in front of them, talking about herself and actual anecdotes and things of her in that space. I'm not exactly sure why this color is orange. It should not be. That's fascinating. Okay, so that threw me off a little bit. That is not the way that should look. And I'm wondering if Leslie is doing a Baru too. Here we've got all of the different kinds of, we actually show them demonstrations. We have audio podcasts specifically about the objectives, talking about how do you speak up. By Jove, we're going to find a podcast of nurses speaking. This is definitively alignment. So we were working at a big level, but also a granular level. We were traveling. We had to break out simulation day very specifically. It looks different. And because we do have a match of, they have asynchronous learning that they have to do, but they are getting together regularly in this first week in a flipped learning so that they can behave as they would on site with Leslie. So one of the things we had to have was this session itinerary. There is no mystery, zero mystery about what happens in a live session anymore, or how it aligns, or who it's involving, because it's right here. QM loves this, because QM is actually only for online courses, but we've proven that you can have a hybrid course be QM ready. So we've got these markers of alignment through design and the experience. So I think that addresses that question. What else do we have in that category?
There are a few questions in the chat that we could go look at.
Cool. What are they? I have a share screen.
Well, one question is, would you say that formative assessments are allocated to track the progression of learning in this didactic course outcome?
That's a great question. And, it makes me, when you think about the answer, of course, is yes. They have been, the formative assessments have been built, scaffolded, and allocated. As a matter of fact, there's one assignment that we have, which is actually a concept map. And we are building on that, for example, in every single week. So we are at the very end of the course, one of the assessments is for them to, and hopefully Stacy can pull up the example that we have in there, but to basically observe a surgical procedure at the, during their clinical experience. But along the way, in every single destination they've gone to, they will have built upon in pre-op, what do you need to look for? In the operating room, what do you need to look for? What are patient safety concerns? What are things we do to mitigate risks to our patients? And they've built upon this as they've moved through their destination, so that when they witness a procedure and they are able to see that, they can create a concept map at the very end that demonstrates many of these. And I'll show you our course map here in a little bit. But they can demonstrate many of these SLOs in this one assessment, which is something that's a cumulative assessment. So it definitely, the goal is for them to be able to track from hearing about content to practicing content in the SIM day or the Smart Hospital day, and to actually witnessing those things and be able to produce this assessment at the end that has been scaffolded along the way. That's just one example that came to mind.
Yeah. And from that, honestly, that question from chat gets us into the category that was really, really up high on everybody's list. And that was talking about, how did the team-based approach to this design support authentic assessment in high stakes clinical setting? And we all have different points of view on this. And I know Messina and Megan do, because I've heard them and I love what they have to say.
Do you want to go ahead, Megan, and start off?
Sure. Are we on to a different topic? Did we move to quality and impact? Is that what?
Yeah, we're in that
Okay, cool.
quality and impact
Nice.
that kind of segued.
Awesome. Well, my part as the OER librarian, accessibility is just in general something that we think about as OER people, and not just accessibility for accommodations for needs, but like true accessibility for all people. So my part was helping to ensure that resources were truly open and accessible, and work to integrate accessibility best practices so that everybody can fully engage.
In my portion of this quality and impact portion was that just making sure that what the content was available. Besides, I worked with Megan with the availability aspect, but using our resources at the library through our databases and having those connections, just making sure that those things were accessible and available, and that they were necessary for what Stacy and Leslie needed for the course, and making sure that it was the quality that they needed. And they were the judge of that. That's my job, is just making sure that the information is there and they could decide if it's going to be what they need. And if it wasn't what they needed, then they'd let me know, and I'd go back and figure out and try to get them what they needed to make it work. So
True. Yeah.
I was just going to say that the partnership with the library, which librarians, we love being included. We want to help. And the help that Messina just mentioned is, we don't even have to know it all. But we are like expert researcher, find the answer for you kind of people. So I think that bringing librarians in was such a helpful, not to like toot our own horns there, but like we will find information or we'll learn it and we'll bring it.
Yeah.
That's why you were asked to be there. Tell that horn. I'm no joke. That's why. Raise it up. It wasn't just one way though. I really want to pull from you what your presence looked like in the end product, like how you were valued. Where do you see your personality in what's going to be in front of learners?
Well, for me, go ahead, Messina.
Go ahead.
For me, this end product touches my heart as an educator and a learner myself. I just personally, I love the way it came out. Messina and I got to go through it and be students. Like I said, add us as students so we get the full effect. And I'm not from the world of nursing. And the user experience worked well for me, and the connection to the theme was beautiful and helped me connect to Leslie. And if I was a student in that course, it would make it so much more engaging for me. In terms of OER integration and licensing transparency, licensing can be really difficult, and there's a lot of fair use issues to think about. And while accessibility has been a learning curve for all of us, we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail later. I think my contributions helped ensure that the course didn't just align, but was also student-centered, adaptable, engaging in that course. I like to think that some of my ideas from my previous roles as a digital learning specialist and an educator and professional development facilitator helped as well.
And I'm just going to add to that. I'm not going to repeat what Megan said, but just the making sure that, like I said before, the material was there. We're just, as librarians, just kind of nosy people. We want to know everything. We don't have to know everything. We just need to know where to find it. And we make sure that that is what you need and what you have. So my great thing about being pleased with this course was, as we went through as students, and having that medical background, I was like, okay, this is good. I'm liking this. And then when I got to a point where we were going through it, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm exhausted. That was a lot. I texted them and said, are you sure that this is what you could have them do, that this is not too much in a short amount of time? And they came back and said, no, it's good, it's good. And they had pause points, and just it was formed very, very well. I was very pleased to see things that I had suggested or given to them to look at, and they were in the course. I was like, I really didn't have a stake as far as, okay, I want everything that I present to you to be there, but it was considered and it fit in where it needed to be. So I was happy that my time was not wasted. But you know, that's the caveat of being a librarian. There are times where that communication may not be the best, but we will figure it out and we will make it happen. So that was my my big takeaway and input with that. I loved it.
I just want to piggyback. You dropped the term pause points, and this is where I saw myself come into this class. I am grateful Leslie allowed me to do something that I do in my own classes that other course builders have not allowed me to do. There is something that I do teach course builders and instructors. I teach them a 5-goal framework for how to do an instruction or introduction activity. There is an approach, there is a process that I developed because it's just, if you're using icebreakers, you're acting so cold. So with this, she allowed me not only to help craft the introduction activity, but I have a huge investment and research in integrating support for neurodistinct individuals into the fabric of a class without anybody knowing it. So I don't do summaries, especially in this course where they are moving at a breakneck speed. I would almost say literally and not just metaphorically. With that, the breather is everything. So where I was allowed to show up and really have a place started with she allowed me to do the 5-goal framework and create the introduction activity. I'll pull that up as well, just so you can get a sense of it. I looked at her content, knowing that people often travel with music. And in a learning or an operative suite, a theater, I knew that crews in those theaters usually use music. So I was like, okay, let's do a prompt here where let's talk about that. Let's pull from there very practically. It's going to fit well into the theme, because at the end of this breakneck lesson through this destination, they get to have a pause point, a layover, and just say, okay, I need to check in with my body. I'm in health. I'm dealing with people's bodies. I have to look after their mental health. What can I do for myself to improve the quality of life for me right now? And so for those people that want to touch and need to find their path again, they can. Or for those who just need to breathe in the middle of crisis, we can do it here. And from the introduction activity, there is the ability to build their own travel playlist. This is one of the parts of framework where they can come back to it later and build the learning experience playlist. So we're talking about how music affects mood, what it will do to health in an operative suite. At the same time, they're building this. So that framework, those pause points were really important to me. I'm so glad it resonated with Messina.
I would just like to point out that I love the fact that we, as a team, we build in the mental health and human aspect of our working together. And that also came out in this course as well, that we're working with humans, we're serving humans, and they need spots for the pause. So I really do appreciate, as an educator, as a person, human, all those things.